Yeah, almost. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Chef AJ and Friends. My friend today is Nichole Dandrea-Russert. She is the lead dietitian and recipe developer for the Food Revolution Network, and she has written a brand new book that's coming out a bit later this month. I believe it's October 29th, along with Ocean Robbins, and it is called Powered by Plants. And she's going to make a delicious recipe from it today, creamy and cozy 30-minute veggie ramen. Please welcome Nichole to the show. It's so nice to have you on the show. You're a first timer. October 29th, along. Oops. There we go. Sorry, I had, what's it called? Where the two things play. So I get to meet you in person last month at the Plantrition Project Conference.
Oh my gosh, that was such a wonderful surprise seeing you there. I didn't know I didn't look ahead of time to see who was going to be there. And I'm glad it was a surprise. So yeah, I got to hug you in person. We got to meet in person before today. I appreciate you having me on today. I'm super excited to be a part of your show.
Well, absolutely. And so congratulations on the new book. Is this your first book or have you written others?
This is my second book, the second book that I co-authored with Ocean Robbins. So as you mentioned, this Powered by Plants comes out October 29th. It's available for pre-order now. Last year, we wrote a cookbook together called Real Superfoods, and that highlights like everyday foods that we have in our fridge or that we're growing in our garden that are like the real superfoods. It doesn't have to be expensive, powders and that sort of thing that you get in the grocery store. They're just like foods that you consume every day, like berries and leafy greens and sweet potatoes. So we highlighted those in that book. And the way that the books have kind of come together is that Ocean writes the first half. So he explains what are the superfoods and gives the scientific evidence behind them and why they're so powerful for our healing journeys. Same thing with Powered by Plants. He wrote the first half, and with Powered by Plants, Ocean breaks a lot of myths around plant-based eating. So can you get enough protein? How do you get your B12? How do you get calcium when you take dairy out of your diet? So he wrote the first half of both books, and then I follow up in the second half with over 60 recipes in each book. So 60 recipes to follow the theme of the book. In the case of Powered by Plants, each recipe was designed to optimize calcium and iron and protein, of course, which is, simple to get on a plant-based diet. There's so many protein abundant foods, but, it really highlights some of those areas that are of concern for people when they're either going plant-based or curious about plant-based or fully in it, and they just want to make sure they're really optimizing their nutrition. And then the other thing with this book is that the recipes are designed to be easy so that you can enter the kitchen with less stress and be very efficient. So the goal is to get done within 30 minutes. We do have one section on one pot meals that take a little bit longer just because you're placing them on the stovetop and it takes a minute for those flavors to meld. But the preparation time is minimal and you're only using one pot. So the cleanup is fairly quick. So these recipes were designed with ease in mind. I have two other books that were written by me solo, and one is called The Fiber Effect. The other's all about dietary fiber. I like to say it's the Cliff Notes to Dr. Bolsowitz Fiber Fuel because our books were published at the same time, and I messaged him. I thought I had, done the research and around fiber and like what's been published, and there hadn't been a book about fiber in many years. And so I was like excited. I'm like, okay, this is going to be new. And, I think that it could be helpful. I want it to be a simple guide for folks to get more fiber in their diet for health. And I saw Dr. Bolsowitz's book was being published like the same month. And I messaged him. I'm like, I'm so mad. Your book is so good. But no, I was kidding. No, his book is it's so good. It's such an encyclopedia. And I was like, okay, my book is the Cliff Note version of your book. But it was good that we're both thinking in the same vein too. And then there's one other book called The Vegan Athlete. And it is a comprehensive guide to fueling on a vegan diet to support athletic performance and recovery. And we talk about how to support training and keep your immune system robust. And we talk about how to get enough protein depending on what type of training you're doing. So the book is pretty comprehensive, all evidence-based, of course. And yeah, it's a good guide if you want to know how to eat to fuel performance. So that was a
Nice.
very long answer to your question.
I
Sorry.
didn't realize you had so many books under your belt. Congratulations. Do you want to jump in right to the recipe right now, Nichole, or tell your story about when you became a dietitian, when you became plant-based, and how you ended up working with the food revolution?
Yeah, gosh, I guess I'm a bad multitasker. So
Okay, start the
let's
recipe,
start,
start the
let's start.
recipe. And as it gets to the point where stuff is happening, we'd love to hear your journey.
And I'm here, I'm going to heat, plus it takes a minute. So I just to share, and I'll infuse the journey into all of this and stop me if I'm going on too long about the recipe and I haven't talked about the journey at all. I just wanted to share what I'm doing here quickly. And I'm not the most tech savvy person. So I've got, I'm working on my computer here and don't have multiple cameras. So please forgive me. But I have my pot heating up. So we're starting with a soup pot. And as you mentioned, Chef AJ, this is creamy and cozy veggie ramen. I don't know where everyone is tuning in from, but in Atlanta overnight, that's where I'm based, in Atlanta, Georgia. And overnight, I feel like it's hit wintertime. It just got really cold here. So it's the perfect day for veggie ramen. And I think we're getting into that time of year in most areas around the country that is just a good time for veggie ramen, and any time is a good time for ramen, in my opinion. So we have our mise en place, and you talk about this. It's so important to have all of your ingredients ready to go. That really helps with efficiency in the kitchen. One other thing that we cover in this book that we don't always recommend, but it really does help with efficiency, is while something is cooking on the stovetop, like the noodles are going to be boiling, we're going to do other components of the recipe, but we just want to make sure we're mindful of the noodles to make sure that we don't overcook them or that they don't boil over the stovetop. So that's the one tip. We have tips in this book on how to make recipe creation more efficient. And that is one area where, looking at your directions ahead of time to see what components can be prepared as another one's cooking. So right now, our pot is getting nice and hot. I'm heating this to medium-high heat. We're going to get the bottom of the pot nice and hot because we're going to oil-free saute. So we have here 1 cup of chopped onion. This is a yellow onion. Getting the spatula. 1 cup of yellow onion, which is about, if you don't want to measure, this is another time-saving tip. Not everybody is into measuring, and also it does take a little extra time to measure. You could always just eyeball it and grab a small to medium onion and chop it up, and that's going to be your onion for this. And then the next is 1 cup of chopped bell pepper. Now, it says red bell pepper in the book, but you technically can use whatever bell pepper is accessible to you: green bell pepper, yellow, orange. You can use a combination. It's always good to have as many colors as possible in any dish. So use a combination, get creative. And again, 1 cup is about 1 medium bell pepper, chopped, seeded and chopped. And then we have 8 ounces of chopped mushrooms. So we're putting them all in a pot together. And this portable stovetop takes a little bit longer to warm up.
No, I agree. I was doing a cooking demo yesterday. I'm one of the culinary instructors for Dr. McDougall's 12-day program. And when you do it with a little camp stove or burner, it really does take a lot longer than on your home stove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a prepared dish ready to go in case it takes too long. We just want to go right to this is what it looks like. But yes, it does. It takes a little bit longer. So it's not sizzling like I want right now. But so just to give you an idea of what this looks like, those onions, and I'll show you in just a moment once the mushrooms start to release some of their liquid. But the onions, the peppers, and the mushrooms, the way that they cook nicely without oil is because the mushrooms release some of their natural liquid, and that helps to deglaze the pan. So you just want to heat the bottom of the pan up, or the pot up, to fairly hot, and that'll help to close the pores of the pan and allow the vegetables to move around freely without oil. And then once those mushrooms start releasing their liquid, that'll act as like a natural deglazer to the onion. So it'll take about 2 to 3 minutes total. And on your stovetop, that works probably more efficiently than my portable stovetop here. So as that is cooking, we're going to go on, or once they start cooking, once they're done cooking, we are going to go on the next step. So we have here a tablespoon of either shaved or finely minced garlic and a tablespoon of either shaved or finely minced ginger. I have to admit, I don't know if you're seeing this here. There's one other key ingredient here, and it is lemongrass. It is like one of my favorite ingredients on the planet. And I don't know if there's a lemongrass shortage or what's going on, but I could not find lemongrass anywhere in Atlanta this week. So what I did, this is like real life. This could happen to you as well. If you're missing one ingredient, you may want to add a little bit more of another. So I just did 1.5 tablespoons each of the garlic and ginger, just so that we have those flavor components. And these are, hold on one second. Okay. So we're going to add them next to the pot, and they only need to cook for about a minute.
Is there a substitute for lemongrass?
You know, I add ginger, I think would be a great substitute. So if you like ginger, if that's, you know, that does add a little bit of spice, but the ginger and the garlic. And then I was trying to think of others that could potentially be like a fresh herb, but I really think the ginger and garlic, I mean, maybe you can add a little bit of more pungency, like with a leek. Yeah, what would you add?
Well, I would probably go with you. I think the ginger would be nice because it does have like a little bit of an Asian flair.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like ginger just adds, and this soup has so much in it that a little bit extra ginger is just, it's not going to be overpowering. I think it's just going to give a nice little spicy kick. And of course, ginger is so healing. So those are cooking really, really slow. Give me a minute. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to share my story real quick as they're cooking. And then the next step, I'll just let you know, is going to be adding 4 cups of vegetable broth. We recommend low sodium vegetable broth. If you can't, homemade, of course, if you have that, is like the best option. And vegetable broth is pretty easy to make at home. I just happened to not, I was traveling before this and didn't have any made, but you can freeze it very easily. But you can make homemade vegetable broth out of vegetable scraps. It's a great way to minimize waste when you have like broccoli stems and you get some onion and leeks and other aromatic vegetables. It's so easy to make homemade vegetable broth. But if you get something in the store, opting for low sodium is always a great way to go because vegetable broth can be really high in sodium and it still has tons of flavor without the sodium. Plus, we are adding sodium elements to this recipe through miso and coconut amino acids. So you're going to get that salt there. So it's really good for this recipe to go for the low sodium vegetable broth if you are buying the store-bought broth. Okay, so while these are cooking, I can share a little bit about my journey as a dietitian, which was like way back, way back when in the 90s when I started. And I'll tell you, Chef AJ, when I started as like a traditional dietitian, it was the 4 food groups. It was meat was the center of the plate. And then we had a side of vegetables and we had a starch side and a glass of milk. That was like and then you'd have fruit in between. Of course, we advocated for fruit, you know, a couple of fruit servings a day. This is what I practiced for a big chunk of my career. And I still wish I knew more about plant-based. We really weren't taught anything about plant-based eating, especially back in the 90s, through our program and the benefits of plant-based eating. Nor were we taught how food got to our plate. So I never associated the meat and the dairy with how it got there. I just, you know, you go to the store, you buy meat, you buy cheese, or you buy milk, and it just arrived on your plate. You know, I really never thought about it. And it was, for me, I had a dark chocolate company for 10 years. And the chocolate company was naturally vegan because I used healthy ingredients. I added blueberries to the chocolate and pumpkin seeds and green tea. I was not vegan or all plant-based at the time. So it was through the chocolate company that I started learning more about plant-based and the power of plants. And because the chocolate company was vegan, I would partner with animal sanctuaries. We would donate chocolate to their events for fundraising. And it was at a Mercy for Animals event that I was attending. They invited us to the event where we donated. And they're like, do you want to come? And I remember at one point the lights went out and they showed a video of a dairy factory farm. And at this time I was mostly vegetarian, but I was eating dairy with every meal. And I saw a video of a dairy factory farm and I was like, I mean, my mouth just dropped. I was like, how is this what I'm supporting? I couldn't, I just couldn't believe where my dollars were going and what I was supporting. And just seeing that made me want to go vegan overnight. So that was all I needed. So I went vegan for ethical reasons. And then the dietitian in me was like, is this even sustainable? Can you get everything you need on a vegan diet? Can you get all the nutrients you need? Is this healthy for me? Is it healthy for my clients? And then I, went deep into the research and when I uncovered the research and like the plethora of information, solid research that supports plant-based eating for heart health and brain health and diabetes management, so much. And of course, reducing the risk of so many types of cancers. My mind was blown away. And in that moment, I just never looked back. This was in 2013. And I just only wish I knew about it sooner so that I could have been practicing that for my entire dietitian career. So that's the story. This is sizzling. I'm going to move on now back to the recipe. I always keep a little bit of water or vegetable broth by the pot just in case we need to deglaze it, but we're actually adding some vegetable broth to this. So it'll naturally deglaze, but I can just share with you. I'm going to move my screen over for a moment. So the mushrooms and the peppers and the onions, the ginger and the garlic are sizzling a bit. The mushrooms are releasing some of their liquid and the onion is becoming a bit translucent. Once that occurs, which at home, this is like 3 to 5 minutes total. It really doesn't take a lot of time. We are going to add the 4 cups of vegetable broth. And then we're also going to add 2 cups of water. So we're preparing the pot right now for the noodles. This is a 30-minute recipe when you're doing this, when you're making it at home, and it is also a 1-pot dish. So it kind of covers both of those categories we were going for in the book. Only have to clean up 1 pot, and it's less than 30 minutes. The portion that takes the longest with this recipe is cutting the vegetables. So you've got the mushrooms, the onion, but if, purchasing pre-cut vegetables fits better in your plan and it helps you get more plant-based foods, then opt for pre-cut or opt for frozen whenever you can. Those are some shortcuts that you can take that can expedite the recipe if you want to spend really minimal time in the kitchen. You don't want to spend that time chopping. I'm going to pause here to see if you have any questions. Well, that's going to take.
I actually do. And if you have any questions for Nichole or about the recipe in the chat, please put them. The recipe is already in the show notes, which you can see on YouTube. So I'm not sure what the timeline is when you first became vegan overnight and you were already a dietitian. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. So I became a dietitian in 1995 officially, and then I went vegan in 2013. So it was a long time before I was exposed to how food arrived to my plate. I felt like it's almost embarrassing to admit that I never connected everything. But I'm just so grateful for it because now it really is a mission to support farmers and practices that align with planet health and human health. And there's so many companies out there and so many brands and so many farmers out there who are practicing sustainable agriculture and, growing these beautiful plant-based foods that we're eating. And I just think that, it helps to, I think no matter where you are in your journey, it's like you learn as you go. And it just helps to know that having awareness along any point is just a part of that journey. And it just makes you better equipped to make decisions for yourself and for your family and for the planet moving forward. So I'm forever grateful for the chocolate company that I learned all this through, that even though I closed it in 2018, it's like always a part of me because it really changed the entire trajectory, like my path moving forward. So for that, I'm very grateful.
Well, I'm curious about something. Did you learn anything about vegan or plant-based diets in dietetic school?
We had And, I think this is still the same unless you're going to a school that has like a specialty in plant-based nutrition. We had about 1 or 2 hours on vegetarian eating, not vegan. It wasn't even a thing when I was in school, but vegetarian. And then also, and especially during pregnancy, that was highlighted, how to um, optimize nutrition during pregnancy if someone is vegetarian. And it was a couple of hours, and that's it. I actually have dietetic interns that work with me now through in Atlanta, and we write plant-based blogs, and it's a really wonderful opportunity because they still don't get a lot of education in plant-based nutrition. So I'm finding unless they're practicing plant-based eating at home, they're coming to me with not a whole lot of background in plant-based nutrition because it's still not being taught in schools. So unless, you're somewhere at like Loma Linda University, who's like around all those plant-based foods all the time, it's a part of like every curriculum out there. So unless it's intentional, there's not a lot being taught, or unless you seek it out.
Yep. So here's a question. Linda says, why did Nichole close her dark chocolate business after 10 years of operation? So were you doing that instead of being like a registered dietitian at a hospital, or well, I'm curious what you were doing.
That's a good question. Thanks, Linda. I've loved dark chocolate. I still love it, even after tasting it like all day long and sampling it for 10 years. I still love it. I started dark chocolate as like something fun and different in my kitchen. I was working in a hospital as a neonatal dietitian. My life in the hospital was I did clinical work for my first 15 years as a dietitian, and it was like IV feedings and tube feedings for babies. So it was very clinical. I loved it. I really loved being in that. It was sad, but it was also you work with a team, and I really love working with the team and learning about the body and the Western system. I think it's very interesting. But in my personal life, I was always very holistic, and even though I wasn't all vegan at the time, I ate more plant-based foods, practiced yoga, was very curious about like cultural aspects of foods. So I love dark chocolate. So that became a creative outlet. When I got home from working in the neonatal unit, I would play with dark chocolate, and I was making dark chocolate truffles without cream. Because I knew that soy milk was a better option. So in 2007, I started making creamy dark chocolate truffles with soy milk instead of heavy cream. And I was like, let's make this even more high antioxidant and nutrition and powered with nutrition, and added blueberries to one. So I had a blueberry truffle. I had a green tea ginger truffle. I had a walnut truffle. I wanted like a high omega-3. So like I had nutrition in mind with the chocolate. And chocolate became a vehicle for me to educate people. I started a blog. There's a blog on the website where people could purchase the chocolate, and I would highlight the ingredients used, like why walnuts are so healthy and why blueberries are so good. So I was encouraging people to eat plant-based foods. And I wasn't all plant-based at that time, but I knew the power of plants. And like I said, that video that I saw was the thing that pushed me over. I was like, no more dairy in my own diet, all plants. And let's, take this a little bit further and see where we go with it. And I closed it in 2018 for two reasons. Because one, I ended up working with Whole Foods and Kroger, and we ended up getting into retail. And I didn't honestly love that side of it. I liked when it was like a small brand, and we were more like selling online, and I got to know our customers. I liked it small, but it really wasn't sustainable financially when it was small. And also I realized that I really loved educating people about plant-based foods. Once I went full head first into plant-based eating, I realized that was my mission. Like, I just want to spend my time educating people about plant-based eating and how to do this in a sustainable way that is healthy for them, healthier for their families, and healthy for the planet. So I closed it to do that full time.
That's a great story. Do you still make them for family and friends or at holidays?
I do. Yes. And I still sometimes get emails from people like, are you still selling your truffles? I wish I was. They were good. And so Last year I had a basil plant in my yard that grew into like a tree. I had so much basil and I was like, what am I going to do with all this basil? I mean, I was giving like bouquets of basil flowers out to neighbors. So, but I still had a lot left over. I was like, everyone's getting basil. Um, so I had a lime basil truffle that was one of my personal favorites. Lime and basil and chocolate together, by the way, are like the most divine. It's the most divine combination. The trio together are so good. So I made lime basil truffles and it was just like old times and it felt so good. And I'm so grateful that I still have the recipe. So I do get to make them for family and friends. And yeah, they just don't look as pretty when because the truffles are the way we were making them, they were like made with a machine, that we had, of course, whole food ingredients, but like when they go through the conveyor belt, it's like Laverne and Shirley or like I Love Lucy, it goes through the conveyor belt and chocolate falls on it. And they're like these perfect little squares. But when I make them at home, they like define the word organic and rustic. Like I make them more into balls and dip them, and they're not uniform at all. They're not pretty at all, but they taste really good. So the flavor's still there. They just don't look as perfectly uniform, which is more my style anyway.
Oh my gosh, that's
Okay with
great.
messy.
That's great. I love that story so much. How did you get involved with the Food Revolution Network? And as the lead dietitian and recipe developer, what does that mean you do?
Oh my gosh, I'm like my heart is with Food Revolution Network, and I'm just so grateful for my time here. I've learned so much, and it's just been an incredible journey with them to be a part of their journey. Um, So when I closed the chocolate company, I was doing some on the side nutrition work. And of course I had recipe development experience with the chocolate company. And I started my own blog. Once I closed the chocolate company, I started my own blog, purelyplanted.com, that I still have as a means to educate people and to develop recipes and share plant-based recipes. And I saw an opening at Food Revolution for a recipe developer. And I had been referring, I was a fan of Food Revolution before I started. And I was like, oh, let me see what this is about. And yeah, I applied and figured I'd see what happens. And it's been now, March will be 5 years. And it's just been the most wonderful journey working with Ocean and John and the whole Food Revolution Network team. Like it is just, I've never experienced just pure love through a company, like everything that they do on the outside, sharing the love of plants and healthy, ethical, sustainable food for all, like that shines through internally too. So it's just they're really lifting the world up, both to like their community outside who's reading the blog, who's taking their courses, but also like internally. It's just such a wonderful place to work. So forever
That's
grateful.
that's great. Carlene, who's watching live on YouTube, says, I really like the previous book of Nicole's Real Superfoods and how she suggests and encourages people to substitute ingredients based on what they like. And there's a question from Pamela. Can we get some of your chocolate recipes?
Oh, I love that idea, Pamela. Well, thanks, Carlene. First of all, thank you for sharing about the book and getting the book. And yeah, it's so important to make recipes your own. I think they could be a great guide, but then also infusing your own favorite foods to them or making substitutions based on what you love and what you have available is always a great idea. And then, yeah, so I love the idea of sharing chocolate recipes. I don't have any of my chocolate recipes on the website, but I'm going to make that a plan for the holiday. And I will definitely recreate maybe one of the truffles, maybe the lime basil truffle. There's also a cinnamon turmeric truffle that is perfect for the holidays. It's like that chai spice flavor. So I've got that on my list now. So thank you for that suggestion. It would be a lot of fun to share that with you all.
Oh, nice. And Pamela says, what sweetener did you use when you were making your truffles?
We used, I started out with maple and then we went to coconut nectar. No, I started out, you know what? I started out with agave, but then, agave, I feel like was getting promoted as like the healthier sugar alternative for a while, but then it wasn't because it's like, dose dependent and it can cause fatty liver and so we moved away from that and then ended up doing coconut nectar. So yeah, and it was they really weren't very sweet. It was really very tiny bit. We also had something called munch And I wanted to make high protein, high fiber chocolate snacks. So I added, it was like equal amounts of dark chocolate. It was 75% dark chocolate and nuts and seeds. So we had an omega, it was called Omega Munch. So it was walnuts, flax seeds, and dark chocolate. That was it. There's just like those few ingredients. And they were like 6 grams of fiber and 6 grams of protein per ounce. And half that ounce was nuts and seeds, and half was dark chocolate. So you're getting like half an ounce of dark chocolate and half an ounce of nuts and seeds, which is a great serving, and you're getting protein and fiber. So they were really healthy snacks. We had a sweet and salty pecan munch. So mixing nuts and chocolate was just a fun way to offer healthy snacking options that are high in protein and fiber for sustained blood sugar and for that gut health. And chocolate itself has a lot of fiber. Actually, it's got prebiotic fiber, which is so healthy for the gut. I can justify dark chocolate all day. So if anyone's not a dark chocolate fan, I'll turn you into a dark chocolate fan.
That is so funny. So when you went vegan, did your husband or family go vegan with you?
That's a great question. This is almost starting to boil. I wanted to check real quick. So my husband is amazingly supportive. When I saw that dairy factory farm video, I came home. I think I flew through the door. I'm like, we are going vegan, or and I think it was we are going vegan. And I was like, well, will you go vegan with me? And he was like, I'll give it a try. Neither of us failed. I didn't learn anything about being vegan in school, and I certainly didn't know how to cook vegan. So my background's Italian, and he was on board, and I ended up making Chef AJ. I made pasta probably like 5 nights in a row with broccoli. Like that was all I can make. And he was like, if we don't switch up the pasta and broccoli dish, I'm probably going to quit being vegan after a week. So I was like, I don't know what to make. What do I put in place of the cheese that I was eating and the occasional fish that I was eating? I really didn't know how to create a sustainable meal. So I had to invest in a good cookbook. And that was kind of like my launch into how to create healthy plant-based meals. And that one cookbook really was a lifesaver and helped. But to this day, I will share that I share the same struggles, similar struggles as many people, in that my husband is not all vegan. I'm very grateful he doesn't cook meat in the house. But when we're out, he will get whatever he wants. He does not have any dietary restrictions, and he cooks plant-based home. Like he'll think of a meat-based dish or a dairy-based dish that he really loves to eat out, and he'll say, oh, I'm going to make a vegan version of that at home. And he'll really, he cooks better than me now, all plant-based. So even though he's not all plant-based, and I share this because I think a lot of people are based the same thing. If you're wanting to go plant-based, or if you're 100% plant-based and you don't have family members or friends that are on board, sometimes you just need to kind of meet people in the middle and say, what are you willing to do? And I know that he loves like super saucy, creamy things and like comfort foods. So I have to like hone in on like, what does he love that we can recreate the vegan version at home. And we have fun now together doing that. And there's no pressure on him when he's out to get a vegan meal every time. Like I really appreciate, he used to be meat and dairy every meal too. So it's a big step, and I do appreciate the steps that he's made towards that. My mom is thankfully all vegan, and my dad is not. So again, it's like differences. I think you just have to kind of meet in the middle and work with people where they are and lead by example. You create delicious food, and you can easily bring people on board and just offer them a taste, and maybe they'll start to get curious and ask you what the recipe is or want more.
Well, when are these men in your life going to get the memo?
I know. Like slowly. We made it was funny. My dad last year, he has high blood pressure and he has Barrett's esophagus. So, and we grew up big Italian family, lots of meat at all of the parties. And, and that is just a culture. It is a culture with our family. And, you have to have meat with meals. So it's been really hard. So it was one of those things where I'm like, what does he like? And he knows how I eat. I'm always like, Dad, if you eat more plants and you do this. And I'm like, what does he really love? He loves sweet potatoes. So last year, I was like, just do this one thing. start adding more sweet potatoes into your diet. Just start adding sweet potatoes. That's all you have to do. We don't have to do an overhaul. We don't have to call it plant-based. We don't have to call it, we just add sweet potatoes. He was so excited that my mom said that he was like coming home with bags of sweet potatoes. She's like, oh my God, you've created a like sweet potato monster. He's eating sweet potatoes all day long. So, and he actually lost weight. He lost weight. He felt better. So we were joking. We were like, we're gonna call your diet the sweet potato diet, and it's gonna be like a new kind of diet now. But he's actually now juicing. He's like, of course you miss the fiber with juice, but it's like he's juicing and he's lowering his blood pressure medication because he's juicing. He likes juice. And we're like trying to like pick things that work for him. And over time, he's gradually added some things in. So, we're not labeling it vegan or plant-based or anything. He's just adding some things in that he's enjoying, which, it makes your heart happy when you see family members doing things that are better for their health, and gradually they come on board.
Yeah. Did you or do you have any health issues that were resolved by eating a plant-based diet?
Yeah, gosh, your questions are really good.
Well, I've been doing this about 3,000 times, so
I know.
Thank you, though, Nichole.
They're such good questions. They're such good questions. When I went vegan for ethical reasons, I wasn't thinking about health. And I think what was super surprising to me are all the health things that I didn't realize were health issues until they got better. And, my sleep, for number one, and this is something that I see with clients all the time, that the thing that they immediately say is the thing that I hear most often is that as soon as people start adding more plants to their plate, their sleep improves. That's like the number one thing I hear, or they have more energy and they feel lighter. Those are the big things. For me, my sleep definitely improved. And then also, I used to have really bad cystic acne. And I ate dairy my entire life, and my skin cleared up so much when I went all plant-based. I also had chronic ear infections. I've always had digestive issues. I had a history of chronic constipation, which I'm sure influenced, we know so much about gut health now. I'm sure that chronic constipation influenced my gut health, and it was probably from not getting enough fiber and a wide variety of plant-based foods. It was before I was all plant-based. And that led to, I had a lot of like autoimmune type issues and like my skin issues. I had chronic ear infections for my entire life. And all of that cleared up. The constipation went away when I went all plant-based, when I finally learned how to eat more than just pasta and broccoli, and had well-balanced diets and a variety of plant-based foods. The constipation went away, my ears cleared up, my skin cleared up, my energy soared, I got better sleep. So yeah, it was things like, I think we end up, feeling like it's normal. Whatever we're feeling is normal, and it's just like a part of us, but it doesn't have to be. And when you make those changes by adding more plants to your plate and you see the results and you feel those results and you're like, wow, I actually feel better. Then that's when it starts to become a habit and you recognize the power of foods.
That's great. You know what people love to hear from just about every guest on Chef AJ and Friends is, what do you eat for a day? And what do you do for movement?
Oh, well, we'll start with movement. Every day, that's another thing that plant-based eating helps us focus. I definitely am like, I have a hard time getting grounded. I have ideas and busy and, a mind that has a lot of thoughts all over the place. And the plant-based eating is a foundation for keeping my mind focused. And that also, the sleep helps with that. And also getting up in the morning, I like spontaneity a lot, but I always need my morning routine because it helps to ground me in the morning. And I try to do some type of meditation, just quiet meditation and breath work and yoga. Those are my primary, I'll start the day with just some silence, just to kind of, I wake up with thoughts in my head, like, this is what I got to do, get out of bed and got to do this, that, and the other. So I'm like, I try to silence that a little bit just to kind of get clear. And so the day goes more efficiently. And then yoga has been my practice since 1999. I was getting injured through running. I was a big runner in the day and getting a lot of injuries, and it brought me to yoga. And I was like, oh, this is so slow. And I can't do it. I can't hold a pose. And it hurts because I ran for so many years and everything was tight. I was so tight. I'm still tight, but it was the mental benefits of yoga that really helped me. It definitely helped me physically open up a lot more. And over time, it takes time to build that. But the mental health benefits are really, that's where I see such a benefit. And you get strength training. You know, I'm in my 50s now, so I have to think about how I'm building muscle strength and bone strength. So yoga is a big component of that. And then every Saturday, my husband belongs to a workout group, and they do kind of like HIIT exercises using your own body weight. They use medicine balls, and they do it outside, which I love because I don't really want to join, I think gyms are great, and they build community, and they're, they obviously like serve a great purpose, but I like to be outside whenever I can. And this workout is in the park, and it's every Saturday. So it's a strength building workout. So I do that. And I do have a goal that I have not met yet to add one more day of strength training again, because like I'm in my 50s. I'm like, I need to definitely we lose muscle mass every year when we get over 50. And of course, bones are so important at every stage of life, but especially as we get older. So I'd like to add one more day of strength training in there, and I have yet to do that.
Yeah, that doing strength training's been my goal for like my whole life, and haven't quite gotten to that yet. So
It's hard to,
it's just no fun. I mean, I don't mind the aerobics. I don't mind the yoga. You know, I get 2 out of the 3, but it's just so boring and it's not fun.
you might like the HIIT workout that we do. We'll just throw a yoga mat down in the park. There's like a park area, and we'll do some push-ups, and burpees are not fun, but sometimes we do them, and like, squats. It's like using your own body weight. So and you hear the birds and you see dogs walk by. So I feel like the outside, where you are, that could be maybe an option too, since you're like in a climate that's conducive to outside. But I know it's hard. I agree with you. It's just not as much fun as
What's
the other.
what's the vegan or plant-based scene like in Atlanta? And by the way, I can't believe you're in your 50s. You know, 40s, 30s, I might believe.
Thank you. And we talked about this, but
Yeah.
it's how you feel. It's how you feel. Because you too, you're like,
Yep,
fiber.
It's not just me, just so you know. Diana writes, I thought she was in her 30s. And that's exactly what I said to her, Diana, before we logged on. I said, how old are you, 30? And so it wasn't just blowing smoke because somebody else said it.
Oh, thank you, Diana. Thanks, Jeff, AJ. I appreciate that. I'm coming in on here every day. No, I appreciate that. I think it's just how you feel. It's a mindset, and of course, plant-based eating helps you feel energetic and younger. But yeah, the plant-based scene in Atlanta is growing. It's a small community. Atlanta is kind of like a small community. I feel like everyone knows everyone, and the plant-based scene is small, but it definitely is growing. There are some wonderful plant-based restaurants popping up right now. Two of my favorites, one that I think they opened maybe a year and a half ago at this point, La Semilla. It's husband and wife team, and she is from Cuba. They both have traveled extensively through Mexico. He's a chef, and they have created this Cuban Mexican cuisine fusion that is outstanding. I mean, he makes his own seitan, and it's like a 3-day process, and it's just like a pulled pork type thing that he does with the seitan, and it's just so good. Like, they just put so much love into their food, and everything takes a long time to make. I can't imagine the processes that go into making it, and it's delicious. So whenever somebody comes into town, we always take them there. And most of our family and friends are not fully plant-based. We don't tell them it's all vegan and plant-based, and everybody leaves there saying it's like one of the best restaurants they've been to.
Nice. Nice.
Always good.
So what do you eat in a typical day of Nicole's life?
So, sorry, I had to get a sip of water. This is boiling. This is kind of boiling. I have this at max. I'm going to drop the ramen in there before I will answer the question. Sorry, I wasn't avoiding it. I just want to show you what it looks like real quick. So it's kind of boiling. Again, it would not normally take this long at home. Next, after we add, so we, sauteed the aromatics and brought out all that flavor. The mushrooms give it umami flavor. The peppers give it some sweetness. The onions give it some of that pungency. And of course, the ginger and the garlic, all of that together makes this a delicious base. And then we have the ramen. It calls for brown rice ramen. This is a brown rice millet blend. I love to, anytime we can add more than one type of food. So like this also calls for leafy green, it calls for bok choy. But you could also add like half bok choy, half kale, or half bok choy, half Swiss chard. And I think the more variety that we have, the better it is for our gut health and our overall health, because it provides a wide variety of nutrients. And this is millet and brown rice. So I selected this because it has some millet and brown rice, which means we're getting the benefits of the millet and the brown rice. So I'm going to drop a couple of these in here. This is 10 ounces and the recipe calls for 8. So I'm just going to put 3 of these in here. And then that takes, depending on which type of blend you're using or which type of noodle you're using, if it's brown rice, it's going to take about 7 to 10 minutes to soften. Once that softens, we're going to add bok choy and edamame, but we have one other element that we're going to add to that soup, and I'll share that with you in just a moment. After I answer your question, because I feel like I'm putting this question off. So,
Yeah, why are you putting it off? What do you eat that you don't want us to?
I'm ignoring you. Every morning, well, I love soy milk. That is like my plant-based milk of choice because it adds protein, and I just love the creaminess of soy milk. So I start every morning with, I call it like my witch's brew. It's like matcha and maca and turmeric and chai spice. It's like this blend of all of these powders, mostly for like the matcha. It's like a matcha latte with like a lot of other stuff. So I have a cup of that. I also sometimes have a cup of lion's mane mushroom cacao. So I might do 2 cups of that. And that's usually when I'll practice yoga. And then I'll come back and make the avocado toast that doesn't look like avocado toast. It looks like everything but avocado because I pile it up so high. So breakfast for me, I like a savory breakfast. Occasionally I'll do oatmeal with nuts and seeds and berries, but I really, on most days, it's a savory breakfast, and it's almost always an avocado toast or leftovers from the night before. But the avocado toast is, it's one of 3 things. It is either whole grain seedy bread. If I want bread, I do like bread as the avocado toast. So it might be a whole grain sprouted, or like a sourdough bread. Or I might do sweet potato as the toast, or I might do tofu as the toast. So it really just depends on what I have available. But any one of those 3 can be the base. And then I load that up with tons of leafy greens. Like you cannot see the toast underneath. I have so many leafy greens on there, and then I'll put avocado on it, and then at least 3 to 5 more vegetables. So sliced radish, sliced cucumber, onion, and then I'll do like fresh ginger, shaved ginger on top of it. I think ginger and pickled red onion are 2 ingredients in avocado toast that I think just change the toast to like from delicious to like spectacular. And then maybe some kimchi. So like the toast is like piled up. It just looks like a pile of, I don't even know. It doesn't look pretty when I make it, but it is super nourishing. And I love the opportunity just to start the day with all those plant-based foods, especially leafy greens. So yeah, so I do that. I do juice. I like green juice because I feel like I get enough fiber from the plants, but I do like to sip on green juice. So I'll sip on that as well in the morning, and have some berries, and typically dark chocolate even after breakfast. And then for lunch, I'll just share one of my favorite lunches. It's a lentil and rice lunch. I usually like to have 1 whole grain prepped in the fridge and 1 type of bean either in the fridge, or if I don't have any beans prepped, I'll just use canned beans like chickpeas or black beans. But there's a dish that I really love. It's a lentils and black rice. But first I saute ginger, similar to what we did here, ginger and garlic and mushroom and onion, just to get all those aromatic flavors, and add the lentils and the rice. I usually add some seeds in there, like mustard seed and cumin seed, to give it more flavor. And then whatever vegetables I have on hand. So like leafy greens and other vegetables. And it comes together in 5 minutes. Once the lentils and the black rice are already prepared in your fridge, taking any veggies that you have out of the fridge and preparing this dish really doesn't take any time. You're kind of heating and serving. And I always kind of recommend, what I look for personally, what I usually recommend to clients is to shoot for, this is not like a hard rule, but like shoot for 3 colorful vegetables on your plate with every single meal, just so you're getting the colors, all like the phytonutrients and the essential nutrients that you need. So variety, again, is key. And then for dinner, it's usually something that my husband and I have try to agree upon. So it might be we do a lot of tacos. He loves tacos, and with something that, like, again, like the whole family thing, you have to agree. I think it's the funniest thing that two people need to crave exactly the same thing all the time. Like, you have to decide on this dinner plan. Like, you both always want the same thing, which is not always possible. So we have staples, like in our rotation, we do either tacos or a pasta night or a big salad with grains and beans and just, a complete salad. That has everything, not just vegetables, but lots of vegetables in it. Sometimes we'll do chili, especially during the fall. We love a nice plant-based chili. But with every dish, like maybe tacos and pasta might be like the goal meal, but I'm always adding tons of vegetables to it, and there'll be some type of bean in there and some type of grain, with the pasta, but we'll add like tons of vegetables and maybe a red sauce or just a little bit of olive oil we sometimes use, and just add all the veggies from the fridge. So I always look at the fridge and like, what do I have to use up? I kind of like leading with a no waste mindset. Because it like drives me crazy when we waste food. We can't waste food. So, and it's kind of a fun challenge to look to see what you have on hand that's in excess or that's on its last leg that needs to be used up, and let that kind of be the center guide of what you're going to create that night. So I do that a lot for dinner time. Like if we right now I have, for some reason, a lot of bok choy that I received in our local produce box. So it worked out perfectly because we're making the soup today, but also I might do like a bok choy stir fry later on this week. We do a lot of that too, stir fries. So yeah, so I feel like that was a very long answer to your question, but having rice and grain, not rice and grain, a grain and legume available in the fridge is super helpful, and just keeping your fridge stocked with, seasonal veggies, local veggies that you can easily chop up and add to dishes. It makes meals come together so quickly. So I'm a big fan of that. And when they're not readily available, I find myself like everybody, like, what are we going to eat tonight? We don't have anything prepared, and it becomes stressful and more complex than it needs to be. So having those things prepared ahead of time is really helpful. Okay, those noodles are getting softer. They're taking a minute to cook. As I mentioned, they take about 7 minutes. They'll take you about 7 minutes at home to cook. So you just want to kind of taste test them to see once they start getting tender and they're like falling off your fork, you might want to, taste a piece of the noodle. Once it's tender, you're going to remove the pot from the heat, but you're also going to add an additional element. So for those of you who are listening who want to stop there, you can just add the 2 cups of chopped bok choy and a cup of edamame. This soup broth by itself, the way it is with the noodles, the mushrooms, the onions, the ginger, the garlic, and the lemongrass, hopefully you can find it. The soup like that alone it's so good. It has so much flavor, especially with those mushrooms giving it an umami flavor. But there is a flavor enhancer that I'm going to add. I'm just going to turn my computer down a little bit. So I know this is not in everybody's practice, but this is light coconut milk. It is high in saturated fat. We recommend light just to keep the saturated fat a little bit lower. You can also use an unsweetened, unflavored plant-based milk. It adds a little bit of creaminess to this soup broth. That is 1 cup of coconut milk. And then we have 2 tablespoons of coconut aminos. Again, with ingredients, there's saturated fat in the coconut milk. You can use a plant-based milk in its place if you want to decrease that saturated fat. With the coconut aminos, the salt in the coconut aminos is lower compared to organic reduced sodium tamari or soy sauce, but again, it can still be high in sodium. So if low sodium is in your practice, you can omit this. You can omit the coconut aminos, or half it to 1 tablespoon instead of 2. And then we have 2 tablespoons of miso. Miso paste, made with soybeans. If you're not allergic to soy, is a great option, or you can do chickpea miso. if you're looking for soy-free. And then we just want to mix this together. So as I mentioned earlier, we used the low sodium broth because these elements do add a little bit of sodium and creaminess. So again, just noting, if you're on specific dietary guidelines for low sodium or low saturated fat, then you can easily make substitutions or omit the step altogether and just eat the broth, consume the broth as is without this additional flavor agent. One other flavor agent that is added to this, again, optional, is spice. So this is gochujang. You can add a teaspoon. You can add a teaspoon of chili paste. You can even just chop up hot chilies if you want to go the whole food route. And if you like a little bit of spice, you can just use whole food, minced hot chilies and add them to your soup broth rather than adding this paste. But it does add just a little bit of a spicy kick. And again, it's completely optional. You don't need to add it. So this is the miso has blended. I like to use a whisk for the miso because it always requires a little bit of muscle to break up the miso. But miso adds a little bit of that umami flavor and just a little extra touch to this. But what happens is once these noodles are done, we add this extra flavor agent to the pot, and then we stir in the bok choy and the edamame just for a minute until the bok choy is slightly wilted. And then other flavor agents that don't have any salt or saturated fat, if you want to omit that flavor agent, the sliced green onion and cilantro. If you don't love cilantro, you can add like basil or parsley or chives instead. So you're adding other, herbs and spices also have the ability to give the soup so much flavor without adding any salt. And then the final is going to be a little squeeze of lime. So let me see. I think the noodles are about done. They're not totally done. Any questions, AJ?
Well, not a question, but a comment from Carlene, who says she uses California balsamic teriyaki vinegar in place of soy sauce or coconut aminos, and I do the same thing. And as a first-time guest on Chef AJ and Friends, you get 2 free bottles of California balsamic vinegar. So you're going to get a little gift.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
that's a great tip. That's awesome. I
And
love
then
that.
another great tip from Susanna says, I've used plant milk and coconut flavoring for baking in place of coconut milk. I heard this idea from Ann Esselstyn, and I heard it once from Mary McDougall as well.
Amazing. Thank you both for those suggestions. I am excited to incorporate them myself. Awesome. All right. So
Actually, though, but when you pick your flavor, since you love chocolate, you might end up picking the chocolate balsamic.
ooh, that sounds amazing. I bet
Yeah.
you, oh gosh. Have you tried it?
Yeah, I mean, they're all good, but I like them. I'm more savory, so I really like the curry and the sweet heat. But you'll see that you'll get an email from me after the show, and there's going to be like 40 choices. You're going to have a hard time deciding.
Oh man, that sounds like a taste test opportunity, like getting a bunch and just having a taste test with all of them.
Well,
If
when
they
he goes in person, you can do that. Like when he so if you come to any conferences or things like that, he shows up and he's great.
Oh man, that sounds so good. What a fun way to experiment with different flavors.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to add this in there, our little extra flavor agent. And I just want to do that too because I want to show you how the color changed a little bit from like this, it looks a little creamier and it lightened up the color a little. Not that that like totally matters, but it looks like a creamy veggie ramen now. And then we add 2 cups of bok choy. Again, going back to the saving time option is 1 small bunch of bok choy. So I just chopped up the stems and chopped up the leaves, and I'm going to add them. And it's a lot. Like, gosh, bok choy is it's just so delicious, and it's also just one of the most nutritious foods on the planet. So you can see there's lots of grains in there. If you can't find bok choy, you can always use Swiss chard, collards, kale, spinach, whatever. Again, like whatever is accessible to you is find your substitutions and use whatever is accessible. And then we have 1 cup of edamame, so frozen and thawed shelled edamame. And that'll add our protein, adds lots of fiber and calcium. This is like a calcium-packed noodle dish, by the way. It is so rich in calcium from the bok choy and the edamame. and just phytonutrients, so many phytonutrients. So if you can look at these products, I'm going to let it sit there for a little bit longer and I'm going to show you the finished version. So it's still cooking a little bit, again, slow stovetop. Ooh, okay, here is, I feel like this could use a little bit more broth in here. Let's see. Yes. Here is, it needs more broth. I made a full dish earlier. Add a little bit more broth to it to show you what it really should look like. So it has more broth in it. Still some out of this pot, it's fresh.
Yummy. That looks amazing.
So, yeah, and and there's also like the buckwheat noodles. You can get even more protein if you use buckwheat noodles and fiber. And then the two of the most important things are these green onions make it extra delicious, and then some type of herb. So I'm adding cilantro, but again, cilantro is not everybody's thing. So any herb that you love, and then a little squeeze of lime at the end is going to just brighten it up, especially if you do use the coconut milk or you use a substitute for the coconut if it's creamy. That little bit of lime really helps to brighten up that flavor. So there you go. There is your creamy and cozy veggie ramen.
Well, that was a beautiful dish. Are all your recipes this quick, easy, and delicious?
The ones in this book are designed to be, yes. I felt like that took me so long, but it definitely will take you half the time at home because we were talking. But yes, it really is easy. And these recipes, we did a sandwich demo yesterday and it was super quick. It was a tempeh, smothered in tzatziki tempeh gyro. And that comes together in minutes. Tempeh it cooks very quickly and it's easy to make. The tzatziki very quickly comes together in 5 minutes, and you add the saucy element with the tempeh to the sandwich or collard green wrap. And those just come together fast. And we've got like salads in here and breakfast dishes and a lot of your, comfort foods. We got a whole section for sandwiches, wraps, and pizza. And again, they're all designed to be prepared. That means like, preparation and cooking in less than 30 minutes or less. Or you have our one pot dishes, which the preparation is minimal time and it just takes some time to cook on the stovetop. We also have a blended meals section. So everything in Powered by Plants is really thoughtfully designed to come together quickly, but also to optimize nutrition. So you're getting a wide variety of all these nutrients found in plant-based foods like calcium and iron and protein and zinc, selenium, nutrients that we sometimes think could be difficult to get. You'll get them through Powered by Plants.
Well, I wish you every success with the book, Nichole.
Thank you so much for having me today, Chef AJ. It was great to be here. Thanks for the great questions, everyone.
Well, it was so fun. And if people want to find you, do you have any kind of social media present or I know you have a blog and I put that in the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah. So of course, Food Revolution Network is foodrevolution.org. And we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as Food Revolution Network. And then for me personally, it's Purely Planted. Purelyplanted.com is my website. And then my Instagram handle is purely_planted. I know it's a little confusing, but yeah, so please connect. I would love to meet you all. So please connect there.
Thanks so much, Nichole. Wonderful presentation.
Thanks so much.
And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ and Friends. Please come back bright and early tomorrow at 6 a.m. Pacific time, which is 9 a.m. Eastern time, for Dr. Michael Greger talking about his new book, Ozempic: Risks, Benefits, and Natural Alternatives to GLP-1 Weight